with a little 4-leaf clover drawn, sketched out very lightly. I hope you can see it. This is going to be kind of like a simple painting, but we'll work on layering color. So I think that we're going to keep it simple, and the colors we're going to work with tonight are Davy's Gray, Sap Green, a little bit of the Cad Yellow, and a tiny touch of Burnt Umber. So 1, 2, 3, 4 colors. And I have all of those colors right here in my palette. Just a few drops of water will reactivate that color. So this is my gray, my sap green, the yellow, and the brown. So guys, I just love to work a wet on wet technique. So we'll just get right started here. So the shamrock is sketched out. It's like a series of little hearts, 4 little hearts. And I'm just going to fill in 2. I'm going to work at 2 of these hearts at a time. Or actually, we could do all 4 with the beginning color, but I'm just going to do 2. So I'm just going to fill it in. This is just plain water, and I'm wetting my paper. Everything that I'm using tonight can be found linked in my Amazon store. That link is in the description, and it'll pop up randomly in the comments section. So I've just wet my paper. The trick with watercolor is to really play and find out, you know, what's too much color and what's not enough color. So I'm going to grab some of this sap green, and I'm going to work out of this well right here. I'm going to put some of the color in there. I don't know what that is. And I'm just going to add some fresh water. I want to work very, very lightly, and it's going to be almost like, let's see, we'll compare it to like dirty water. Like if my brush just still had a little bit of green left over into it. So I'm just going to lightly put some of that. And look, you can hardly see that, but I'm just going to wet that very lightly with my sap green, that lightest bit of color. And I'm just working really quick to fill that in. Then what I can do is come back over to my palette and maybe touch a little bit of more of that color on my brush. And I love to use the tip of my brush just to drop in some of that more pigmented color around the edge. So I'm just kind of working it around with the brush. I like it darker towards the edges than I do the center. And we're going to just come right over here into the other side of that second heart that we did. And we're going to do the same thing there because that water or the paper is still wet. You can see how that color just starts to kind of bloom. Water rushes to water, so the way the paint reacts to the water, and it will start to spread. I'm going to pull some more of that color through, just a bit. And I can come over and just take another little swipe of a little bit of a deeper bit of that color, and I'm just going to work that right here in the middle. I don't want to keep adding too much water, but right in the center, I'm going to really just dab some concentrated color. And I have not switched colors yet. All I've done is adjust the amount of water that's in my brush. What I am going to do now is just pick up a little bit of this yellow, and I'm going to mix it over here with my green. And see how that just makes it a little bit more vibrant? I don't want a whole lot of water on my brush, so I can just grab a paper towel or a tissue and kind of dab some of that off because my surface is still wet. So I'm going to pick one side of the shamrock And I'm just going to work a little bit of that brighter green kind of in one side, and then maybe in this little hump of the other side of that little heart. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to drop some of that brighter yellowish green, and because the paper is still pretty wet, it's going to do all the really hard work for me. Now, before I dry that, I'm going to take that brush again and I'm going to dip right back into my sap green. I'm picking up really concentrated color now. I'm going to just dab a little bit more in the center, because now as the paper is still wet, but it's starting to dry, and you see I'm just tapping. I am just tapping that color. But because the paper, it's not saturated wet, but it is still a bit wet, and I'll just pull some of that up the edges and maybe just a little bit out the center. I'm going to curve my lines to kind of give the shamrock a little bit of a direction on which way I want it to go. So I'm going to give that just a minute to kind of start to just let the water pull the paint and make it really soft. And then I'm going to hit it with the hairdryer. Once we work on this leaf and this leaf in the same way, it just won't all become one green big blob. You will see the definition between the two. Dry just a tiny bit, and I'm going to work on the outer edge of these two, because when watercolor dries, it dries lighter. So this got really light. This is just water on my brush, and I'm just washing that water right around the edges again of both of those, and I can work that down into those leaves a little bit. I'm going to use more sap green, pretty concentrated. And we're just going to put a tiny, we're going to drop a tiny little bit around the edges. So I'm just kind of tapping to let that paint come down off of my brush. You can work it by pressing the brush a bit. Don't be afraid to play with your brushes. Pull that color through. I am going to take a tiny bit of the Davy's gray and go right along that outer edge. I'm going to leave it alone. This side, I'm just going to go in with the Davy's gray. And I'm also going to just a little bit in the center there. I want to darken that center green. And I'm going to just tap that around this leaf just a bit, up into that gray. Can work it back and forth just a bit. And it will just start blending into each other. The underside of the Clover. And as I get to the bottom, I'm making it a bit thicker. You can make it as thick as you want, honestly. But I'm just pulling that color through, a bit thicker at the bottom. And then I am going to grab a tiny bit of my brown on the brush. And at the bottom, I'm going to drop some of that brown down there. Can work it up just a little bit. I'm going to leave it. I think maybe I'll just use my brush to pull it up just a bit. If your line gets wonky, you can fix it. Okay. My little tiny liner brush. And we're just going to do just a tiny little bit of fine detail right here just to really make each of these leaves kind of pop so that they don't look like one green bit. So I'm going to use some of my Davy's Gray. And I'm going to pick up some sap green. And I'm just mixing those two colors here in my well, the very tip of my brush. Around maybe a quarter of the way up. Maybe just a quarter of the way up each of those leaves. Okay. I'm just using the tip of the brush. You can pull some of that up the center. Now this one here, it's kind of bugging me, so we're going to darken that one just a tiny bit. I'm going to add just a tiny little bit of water. I don't even know if I need to do that. I'm going to dip into that gray, okay? So watch. I'm going to put that brush in the center. I'm just going to lay it down, and I am just going to darken this part. And you see how the brush is on its side? A pretty good bit of water in there. And I'm just going to pick up some of that green right on that brush. Okay. You can use your finger. You can use another brush. Just hold it over the paper and tap, 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 right? Add some of those really pretty fun watercolor drops. Now, what the heck? I'm going to come in here and just pick up some brown with my green and maybe just a couple little more drops. And we're going to call it done. Let me know what you guys think of this. I hope you like it. Please like and follow. You can sprinkle this video out.